Good evening, just gone 7 p.m, and it's Wednesday, the 17th of February 2021. My name's Toby Lepati Mesme, and this is another edition of MesmePolitics. Welcome along. Between now and 7:30, we are live, getting you up to date with all the latest in UK and US politics from a unique leftist perspective. Come say hi in the chat or drop us an email, tobyjoshua2004 at gmail.com with suggestions for anything you want us to talk about today or in the future. Let's get on with it. Alright, on the way, an EU Brexit climb down. Dominic Raab calls for ceasefires to enable COVID vaccinations. Also, I want to get into the Joe Biden town hall that he did with CNN yesterday and Joe Biden's climate policy. But now, in a minute, I want to talk to you about Prince Philip in hospital. I want to talk to you about the Prime Minister's comments on devolution. But first, BBC Islamophobia. So, more than 100 public figures, including the Tory peer Saidi Wazi, and Labour's MPs Diane Abbott and Naz Shah, and the comedian Deborah Frances White, have signed an open letter to the BBC criticising Radio 4 Woman's Hour, a Radio 4 Woman's Hour interview, a strikingly hostile interview with Zahra Mohammed, the first woman ever to lead the Muslim Council of Britain. The letter, organised by writers Yasamin Abdel Magid and Mariam Khan, called on the BBC to diversify its editorial and production team and better engage with Britain's Muslims. It claimed the line of questioning in Mohammed's interview reinforced damaging and prejudicial. I know what I'm saying, but my mouth can't say it. Prejudicial. Really? I can't say that word? We know the word I'm talking about Islam and Muslim women. Last month, 29-year-old Mohammed, a training and development consultant from Glasgow, became the organisation's first female leader as well as its youngest. Prejudicial? Why can't I say that word? Okay, so this is from February the 4th. Mohammed appearing as a guest on Radio 4's Women's Hour. I'll let you listen, then I'll obviously have a lot to say on this.
How many female imams are there in the UK at the moment? Just because I presume we'll get to this more, but representing, of course, women, which you will do as part of this, how many do we have in Britain?
I mean, I think, again, I wouldn't have a clue on these numbers because my role is making sure that we include our affiliates, particularly women, in the work that we are doing and making sure that our structures, as well as the work we do, are truly representative. So I think that,
you don't know, that's fine if you don't know, but do we have female imams in this country?
I mean, again, it's not, are you referring to chaplains or are you referring to women that lead the prayer? What are you referring to? And I think...
Well, you tell me. I'm genuinely intrigued to know. Of course, female priests have been around for some time. We've also seen the advent of female rabbis in this country. What is the picture for women leading prayer in Britain in Muslim communities?
Well, I think my role isn't really to adjudicate or to examine that part of spirituality. I think where women want to make those choices and where, that these are all religious discussions.
Oh, no, of course. It was just, I thought, because the Muslim Council of Britain's played such an important role in getting the number of Muslims, for instance, added to the census. I mean, that was done at the turn of the century, so we actually knew how many Muslims there were. Do we have female imams?
I think what's really important for the Muslim Council of Britain and the work that we do is actually that it's not about defining, or going into these types of questions regarding spirituality, but actually looking at how we can benefit our communities, especially given the pandemic and given,
of course,
the role that everybody needs to be playing.
And we will get to the pandemic. It's just quite striking that you can't sort of answer that question. I recognise it's not a religious or spiritual role.
Exactly. I don't feel like that's within the parameters of my roles and responsibilities, especially as, the first elected female
I mean, I would have
representative.
asked a man, but I'm asking you
Well, I'm
because
just
you're here.
Very unsettling, uncomfortable to listen to there. It's wrong, not necessarily because we're asking that question. It's because that question is clearly being asked in order to enforce sort of a double standard prejudice on the Muslim community, where we really press them on treatment of women and gender equality, whereas the same questions are not being put to other religions that have the same historical issues with the role of women regards men. That is a all religion, all society thing. And what's being done here is a singling out. And we see, women sort of being... The alt-right often uses sort of, oh, Muslims don't treat women right. It's obviously a trope, but that's what they say. And that's sort of a way they radicalise people against Islam and against Muslims, just trying to live their lives as citizens of modern Britain. It is very much a myth that socially Muslims in Britain are living in some sort of dark age where women are subservient. It's absolute nonsense. Of course, there are issues with that in every religion, but that's a completely unrepresentative view of what life would be like in a British Muslim family. Completely wrong. And that's the problem here. The thing about Islamophobia is in this country, it is acceptable in the way anti-Semitism was in the 1930s. We're sleeping on it, and it is pervasive. It is right across society. It's totally acceptable to deny it as an issue, to deny its validity. People are touted as anti-racism activists, even though that they are very clearly Islamophobic or have made anti-Muslim comments. We see this most recently with Starmer's Labour anti-Semitism board. There are individuals on it. Obviously, you want credible anti-racists on the anti-Semitism board. People who've denied the scale of Islamophobia or said Islamophobia isn't an issue in society. We wouldn't do this with other forms of racism. It's only Islamophobia that in this very specific way is completely blotted off the map. Meanwhile, Boris Johnson is talking about devolution. Have a listen.
I think that a lot of people looking at the way the NHS across our whole country has performed, the way the armed services that you can see here today in this hall have been so valuable, the way the drugs that we've had have been procured nationally, invented nationally. I think people can see the strength of the
So has
union.
devolution been a disaster?
Well, certainly not overall. Absolutely not overall. I think that I speak as the proud beneficiary of devolution. When I was running London, I was very proud to be doing things that made a real difference for my constituents and for my electorate, improving quality of life, making sure that we drove down crime, that we did everything we could to give advantages to young kids, and that was what I did. And I think
that's you as Mayor of London.
That when I was Mayor of London.
Wales today. Can I ask you about Mark Drakeford?
But your point is a reasonable one. I think that devolution can work very well, but it depends very much on what the devolved authorities do.
Well, let's turn to that. Are there lessons for you in Mark Drakeford's approach? Wales was first, for example, to vaccinate over 70s.
I think that across the whole of the UK there's been an outstanding vaccination performance, and it's great to be here in Cwmbran and see I think 46,000 they've done in this centre, a really outstanding achievement. And I think as the song goes, I've been all around the world, from LA to Japan. I've never found a place for vaccines like Cwmbran. How about that?
So, the thing about Johnson is it's him and his government that are tearing apart the union. It's a good thing the union's being torn apart. About time. England, Scotland, Wales went their own ways. However, it won't go back. The genie won't come out the bottle. A combination of Brexit and Johnson mean the destruction of the union in the medium and the long term are entirely guaranteed. Completely. Meanwhile, the Scottish government inadequately prepared for COVID. According to a report by the country's public spending watchdog, the Audit Scotland report found that despite 3 preparedness exercises since 2011, ministers had failed to follow up on recommendations to improve availability of PPE and the capability of social care. One thing I feel has to be put in here, has to be mentioned, is the simple fact that, well, they don't exactly have tax and spend or sort of devolve down to them, do they? In the ways they might want. They can't utilise their economy in the same way. There are huge criticisms to be made of the SNP's domestic management, countless criticisms. However, we do have to take it all with a pinch of salt, like when they rail against Welsh Labour, and Welsh Labour have a hand tied behind their back at all times. Meanwhile, the Duke of Edinburgh has been admitted to hospital.
Some breaking news to bring you, and His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh has been admitted to hospital. He was admitted to the King Edward VII Hospital in London yesterday evening. The Duke's admission, Buckingham Palace say, is a precautionary measure on the advice of His Royal Highness's doctor after feeling well. The Duke is expected to remain in hospital for a few days of observation and rest. Let's bring...
Now, I don't know, right? He's a really old guy, obviously, and I wish no one ill. Some people are over the top on this, though. I'm just not... Maybe it's because I'm a Republican. I still value everyone's human life. He's an old racist. I'm just not that fussed. Really. I don't want him to die. I don't want anyone to die. Ever. However, I'm just not that fussed. In particular. Maybe you are. If you are, try and explain it to me. Maybe you'll make me fuss, just like you. We'll see. Joe Biden has done a town hall in the United States, and he was asked about forgiving student loan debt. Have a listen.
Loans are crushing my family, friends, and fellow Americans.
Me too.
The American dream is to succeed, but how can we fulfill that dream when debt is many people's only option for a degree? We need student loan forgiveness beyond the potential $10,000 your administration has proposed. We need at least a $50,000 minimum. What will you do to make that happen?
I will not make that happen. It depends on whether or not you go to a private university or a public university. It depends on the idea that I say to a community, I'm going to forgive the debt, the billions of dollars of debt for people who have gone to Harvard and Yale and Penn and schools, my children. I went to a great school. I went to a state school. But is that going to be forgiven rather than use that money to provide for early education for young children who come from disadvantaged circumstances? But here's what I think. I think everyone, and I've been proposing this for 4 years, everyone should be able to go to community college for free. For free. That costs $9 billion, and we should pay for it. And the tax policies we have now, we should be able to pay for it. You spend almost that much money as a break for people who own racehorses. And I think any family making under $125,000 whose kids go to a state university they get into, that should be free.
So
you're not making as much as you want.
Joe Biden there, pretty flippant, pretty dismissive on the issue. It's a straw man, the whole, people go to wealthy schools, therefore we shouldn't cancel any of it. First of all, he can. The practicalities, he can cancel the thing. He just won't. He should. Second of all, in economies today, you are simultaneously telling people they need to accumulate this debt in order to get a well-paid job. And at the same time, you're saying, if you go, we'll punish you, call you an elitist, and leave you with hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. It's a real issue. It's something that should be addressed. It's something a steady majority, not a lot, but not like a heavy majority, but a pretty steady majority in various, depends how you word it, but in various polls, support. And it is a measure that is morally, it's a morally just thing to do. Something you can do with the stroke of a pen. It's something that will get young people out to the polls in future. Why not do it? Why not cancel the thing? More observations about Joe Biden at the debate. Throughout the debate, you hear it. Not the debate, sorry, the town hall. He sounded like a fossil, right? He used the phrases and the little catchphrases he said. obviously some people like that. He won an election with the most votes of any presidential candidate in history. However, it really did sound like someone from the 1930s having a conversation. It's a little bit surreal. This isn't Barack Obama, and this isn't even Donald Trump. He stumbled a lot on saying things. At some points, it was quite painful to listen to. Obviously, people say that's purely because of the stutter, but it's obviously not, because he was much more coherent than that 10 years ago. So it is a slow deterioration more than anything else. I wouldn't want to mock anyone for a stutter. There is clear evidence of this being linked to decline. He also made the false equivalency, really damaging false equivalency. People talked about how divided the country was. He went, oh yeah, on the fringe, both ends, basically equating the quote-unquote far left with the far right, so people who want affordable healthcare and people who are literal neo-Nazis. It's a bit like when they equate it the other way with racism. Oh, someone said something dodgy about Israel on one end, and oh, someone just burned down a synagogue on the other end. It's sort of, the false equivalencies are really damaging because they diminish the rising threat of the far right. Biden will always be Joe Biden. If the town hall taught us anything, it's that. Joe Biden will always be Joe Biden. Very deluded, saying the country's not divided. Meanwhile, in Jacobin, there's an interview with Kate Ornoff. Joe Biden's climate policies are a step back from death wish, but we need more than that. So far, the Biden administration's stated climate policies have shifted the US government from a stance of death wish climate nihilism to one that resembles a typical centre-right European government. But without a sharp move to the left on economic aspects of climate transition, even from that, much progress won't materialise. So that's where we are. It's true. There is room to be optimistic about the Biden administration on the issue of climate change. Thank God, right? They're clearly going to do some stuff, but it's not nearly enough. And it is all about upwards pressure and organising, because politicians clearly are not going to get a grip on this on their own. They're only going to do that if they're under serious pressure. It's like the civil rights movement. It's like the women's movement. It's like the movement for extending the franchise to working people. It has to be done. But it has to be done really quickly. There's no waiting around, right? The planet is burning. The Biden administration may not fiddle while Rome burns, but it may flap about a little bit more loudly, but still Rome will be burning. That's the risk. The risk is very much not they do too much, it's they do too little. It's always been that they do too little. I'll give you a little taste of the Joe Biden town hall. Have a listen to Biden being asked a question about what it's like to be in the White House now, and you'll sort of hear how it flows.
You have, over the years, over your career, you've already spent a great deal of time at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, except now you're living there and you're president. It's been 4 weeks. What's it like? How's it different?
I get up in the morning and look at Jill and say, where the hell are we? No, it's, look, it's, I've only been president 4 weeks. And sometimes, because things are moving so fast, not because of burden, it feels like 4 years. It's not because of the burden, it's because there's so much happening that you're constantly focusing on one problem or opportunity, one right ad seriatim. But what happens is that it's what I didn't realize. I had been in the Oval Office 100 times as vice president, or more than that, every morning for the initial meetings, but I had never been up in the residence. And one of the things that, I don't know about you all, but I was raised in a way that you didn't look for anybody to wait on you. And it's where I find myself extremely self-conscious. They're wonderful people who work at the White House, but someone, standing there and, making sure hands me my suit coat. Or
you'd never been in the residence of the White House?
I only been upstairs in the yellow room, the oval upstairs.
I don't know. I've never been there either. But
no, and, but it's look, the people down there are wonderful, and I find that...
Let's have a listen. Let's have a look, at what people are saying in the chat. Someone can't say what was it? I can't remember what the word was. The word I couldn't say earlier. I have stumbled on words and names on the show before. Getting a name wrong is really, the pits. But I have not made several attempts at a word and still been unable to pronounce it. It's one for the MesmePolitics history books there, and it is probably not one I'm going to be able to pronounce anytime soon. I would have a look, but the script that I was reading it off is now gone. Deirdre says, very awkward. Silence speaks loudly. Not sure what that was about. Probably Johnson. I'm not sure. John says, why would any self-respecting Celt want to stay tied up with Johnson and his cronies? Is Kent Celt politically correct? I think it is. I'm not sure. If I was a self-respecting Celt, I wouldn't want to be tied to Johnson and his cronies. And John also says lots to be said to having a grant system like in the UK based on people's ability to pay rather than an overall free system. I fully disagree with that. The commodification of education in this country is a problem that goes back a long way. Prior generations had the opportunity to go to university for free in this country. Many in America had the same thing, but we had it universally. Bring it back. That is the only way. Means testing and tinkering around the edges are not sufficient. Over in the UK, and Dominic Raab, the UK Foreign Secretary, is to ask for ceasefires to be implemented in conflict zones so local populations can be vaccinated against coronavirus, arguing that the world has, quote, a moral duty to act. He's to chair a meeting of the UN Security Council in an effort to persuade members to agree a resolution calling for locally negotiated ceasefires in areas such as Somalia, South Sudan and Yemen, saying global vaccination coverage is essential to beating coronavirus. Let's have a little listen to Raab appearing earlier on Good Morning Britain.
Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab is leading calls for a ceasefire so vulnerable people in war zones can receive the COVID vaccine. He joins us now. Good morning to you, Mr Raab. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
You're calling for this ceasefire. It's not the first time you've done this, of course, and it's something that we would all like to see happen more regularly. It's not been successful up until now. What makes you believe that these warring factions are going to listen to you?
Very difficult, and it's so important. That's why we need to keep trying it. It was tried last year. It was a French initiative that we backed. And the thing that we're looking out for here, the reason that it's so important is you've got the triple whammy, if you like, the compound impact in these war-torn zones of conflict, famine and COVID. I think the difference this time around is that we've got the vaccine. And so that gives us a very clear opportunity to provide that lifeline to those particularly vulnerable people living in the particularly vulnerable areas.
Yeah, well, we have the vaccine, don't we? We have the vaccine over here and the vaccine rollout, and the procurement by our government has been fantastic. And I know that we are a huge contributor to COVAX, but a number of these countries, a number of these war-torn areas don't have access to the vaccine yet. They just don't have it. And so how are we going to get the vaccine to them in time for them to have this ceasefire in order to vaccinate them before the ceasefire ends?
So, as I was coming on to say, so what we're doing is not just leading in what we're doing in terms of our domestic rollout, but leading the way internationally. We hold the presidency of the United Nations Security Council, the international community's top body, and we're trying to achieve two things with the debate and the resolution we hope will pass. First of all, secure a ceasefire to allow logistically the vaccine to be distributed. And secondly, call for people to follow the lead, countries to follow the lead the UK has taken in supporting what's called the COVAX AMC mechanism. We've put £500 million into that mechanism that will secure 1 billion doses. And that's the way we get not just the lifeline, the route into those vulnerable people, but make sure there are vaccines that can get needles into arms.
It seems like a good idea to me, the ceasefire thing. You know, what can you argue with that? However, it is just gestures. It's performative gestures. How that will get done, or how Dominic Raab will help that get done, seems iffy to me. No one listens to Britain. Why would anyone listen to Britain? We are a bit of a laughingstock. Sorry if you don't like to hear that. It's true. Live with it. Snowflakes. That's just how things are. Meanwhile, Angela Rayner is talking about the biggest set of elections that our country has ever had outside a general election.
In May, we have the biggest set of elections that our country has ever had outside of a general election.
Yeah, just said that, Angela.
Every vote counts, and we're counting on yours. And just like everything else we've done since the COVID pandemic began, you can vote safely from home. So don't miss out. Make sure that you vote early and vote by post. Get your postal ballot today and tell your family and friends to get theirs too. We've set up a website to make it easy to register to vote from home, and we'll send your form out to you. So vote early, vote safely and vote from home. Vote against the Tories' council tax rise. Vote against the Tories' £1,000 cut to universal credit for millions of hard-pressed families. And vote for a pay rise for our key workers.
And it says, vote early, vote at home, vote by post, help Labour win. 6th of May. Labour local elections will be huge, absolutely monumentally huge this year. And it'll be fascinating to see what happens across the country nationally, what the trends are. Because polls are polls. People actually going in the polling booth or sending in their votes, that's a whole different matter. And it will be the biggest gauge of public opinion we will see between now and the general election in 2024. Labour have lost my vote, obviously. I left the party. I will not be voting for the Labour Party or advocating a vote for the Labour Party. I will be backing the Green Party, obviously, in my area. And I would encourage you to back the Green Party, vote for the Green Party at a local level, try and form a green wave. Got to start somewhere, doesn't look very likely. But they are doing some really good things at the local level. And at the same time, I also, if your option isn't green, if there isn't a credible green option in your area, there's nothing else. Let's be pluralistic. If the Labour left has representation on the council, or as a mayoral candidate or whatever it is, of course there is the option there of backing principled leaders on the left of the Labour Party, and that's not particularly anything we could argue with. The EU is seeking to de-escalate Brexit tensions in Northern Ireland with the establishment of a new clearinghouse committee to work out solutions to issues caused by new trade barriers, including controls on supermarket and chilled meat supplies. The European Commission Vice President Maros Sefcovic said the introduction of the Northern Ireland Protocol had been administratively extremely challenging, but the EU is doing as much as possible to calm down and stabilise the backlash over checks and controls on goods entering the region from Great Britain. He told MPs on Ireland's European Affairs Committee that the UK rejected a transition period over issues such as the supply chains of sausages and that teething problems were inevitable, saying we knew this might happen. We have been discussing this with our UK partners for the last year. The EU have not covered themselves in glory during the pandemic. There were many advantages to be had in terms of a coordinated response. It could have been great, but they've shown themselves to be the bureaucratic mess that they are by failing to take account for a number of factors, not living in the real world, and they've completely ballsed it up. And they've made Brexit Britain look really accomplished in the process. They may well have doomed themselves in the long term. This will be enigmatic of issues in the way the winter of discontent, wrongly, was seen as sort of emblematic of the shoddiness and failure of the Labour Party. This may be, in the long term, the vaccine debacle may be emblematic of the shoddiness of the EU. We already see right across Europe, France, Germany, opinions on the EU are souring very rapidly. People are not happy. And finally today, UK volunteers will be deliberately exposed to COVID in a first world trial, a world first trial. A world-leading study has been given the green light to find volunteers who will be exposed to coronavirus in a bid to speed up the manufacture of new vaccines. It's ugly. It's not ideal. It does have to be done, but it mustn't be coercive. That's my line on that. And with that... thank you for listening today. We will be back same time, same place tomorrow. Subscribe, turn notifications on, tell your friends. And we will be back for your Thursday evening from 7 p.m. with Mesme-Politics. I am Toby Lapati Mesme, and congratulations, you are now officially up to date with all the latest in UK and US politics for the next 24 hours. We'll see you in 23 and a half hours, 7 p.m, Thursday the 18th. We'll bring you up to date with everything that's happened between now and then. Email me, tobyjoshua2004@gmail.com if you want to suggest any topics for tomorrow.